Tom Wesley is running for U.S. Congress. He is running against Richard Neal, who, as you know, has been the incumbent for, I believe, 250 years.
Yeah, before that he was the mayor of Springfield for 130. He also recently spent millions of dollars to paint a new line down State Street. Very expensive paint, I guess.
In the studio with us right now is Tom Wesley. How you doing, Tom?
Good morning. Just like Springsteen, I was born to run.
Well, you're born to run, Tom, but yet you're not a career politician.
That's correct. I've not run for office before. I like to call myself a career citizen.
What do you do right now?
I work for a large multinational life science company out in Milford, Massachusetts, about $1.5 billion, and I do their strategic planning and do a lot of their global activities for them.
Now, so Milford and this town here, East Longmeadow, all in the same district.
Everywhere from the Connecticut River east out to Route 495 is part of this district.
Wow.
41 cities and towns. It's a pretty big chunk of territory.
Now, we've had Rich Neal on the show many times, and I know that there are many people who, in Massachusetts, for whatever reason, keep voting in incumbents like it's a comfortable old shoe. And the fact of the matter is, sometimes there are people in these offices, whether it's Rich Neal or some other incumbent, that tend to get kind of fat and soft over time. Tell us about what you feel Richard Neal has not been able to do in the time he's been in office.
Well, I think he's really not connected with the people in the district anymore. You know, you look at this western edge of the district, and you know, Richie's got a real brand out here. Obviously, he's a local guy and made his way all the way through the Springfield machine, the system. But you look on the eastern side of the district in the Worcester County area where I live, he's a ghost. There's no brand out there. It's kind of interesting now what you're seeing popping up. This is the first time he's had opposition really in 14 years. There are Richard Neal bumper stickers, and there are yard signs that are cropping up. Did you ever think you'd live to see a day when Richard Neal had to put a yard sign up?
I hope not. And actually, your sign is it says Repeal Neal.
RepealNeal.com.
Yeah. Now, but you bring up that, and I think that's a good point because we're talking about the State Street thing, and you know, Richie's. There are some who will say, Richie mostly, how much he's done for Springfield. It's his hometown. Who's to say you're not going to turn around and do the same thing for Milford and become a ghost in Western Mass?
Well, look, I think it's the responsibility of your elected official to represent everyone. This is a very diverse district. I mean, on this side, you've got a real urban center in Springfield with a media market that's sort of Springfield, Hartford. You go all the way out towards where I live. I mean, we read the Boston Globe out there. We're Metro West. We're in a Worcester sphere of influence as well, and in the middle, in the sort of Brimfield and Munson and Wales and Holland, it's quite rural there. It's a very diverse district, so it requires someone to be attentive to all the needs of the people there. I don't think it's that hard to do. I just think you have to reach out and communicate, which is what we're doing right now, by the way, and going on things like cable access TV and doing those sort of town halls and letting people understand where you're coming from and understanding where they're coming from.
This is Tom Wesley in the studio. He's running for U.S. Congress, and you can go to tomwesley.com or repealneal.com. What is politically though? I mean, what separates you between yourself and a guy like Richie Neal?
Well, just about everything philosophically. I mean, you can start with anti-bailout, anti-stimulus. Those are probably the biggest things right now. The economy is in bad shape. He's for higher taxes, bigger, expansive, more expansive government. I'm really just for all the things that are opposite of that. There really couldn't be more distinct lines of difference between us.
Now, he also wants to spend millions of dollars to redo the Union Station in Springfield. That's our downtown. To turn it into an intermodal transportation center. Is that a project you would want to continue with?
Well, I think we have to take a look at things comprehensively. You know, if you're talking to the people in Palmer, they'd like a few $1 million for a
vacuum cleaner.
Well, they'd like it for a station platform is what they'd like. You know, we've been trying to push that project for 20 years. Look, it's important to have your public facilities be adequate and up to speed and up to date. But we have to take a look at what the relevancy is there as well, and then also look behind it and see what's driving these these investments? Is it political payback, or is it truly a rejuvenation project for the city? And how does it affect the rest of the district as well?
Well, and that's just it. And this has always kind of been a craw or stuck in my craw with Richie over years. It was this whole Union Station thing, because back when he was talking about it earlier, he was talking about a major retail outlet and a place where people are going to come downtown. And since then, a lot of that has been drawn back, and simultaneously, there's a lot more talk about the New Haven to Springfield to Boston Metro line. Which all of a sudden makes the idea of a new Union Station not a bad idea as long as it's done properly. And I don't know that retail, as in clothing or stuff like that, is a good idea, but maybe rebuilding a transportation center like that isn't a bad idea.
Well, I think it's important to connect Springfield with Boston by rail, through Worcester probably. And I think, again, we talk about the people out in Palmer who've been desperately trying to get Amtrak to open their doors. Actually, 2 trains stop there every day. They don't open their doors because they can't get out, and what they've been trying to do is get a platform built. So I think we have to look at this comprehensively. That's where the population corridor is, not this so-called education corridor. But I think, if you look back at the end of World War II, when the government was starting to hand out some money for these types of projects, Selma and Montgomery, Alabama opted to get a new opulent Union Station type railway terminus. People in Atlanta decided they wanted to put their money towards an airport. And if you look at this, 60 some odd years later, I think the folks from Atlanta made the right choice, and probably the folks in Selma and Montgomery are still admiring their station and trying to wonder whether they should put more improvements in it to attract retail trade. And the folks at Hartsfield Airport in Atlanta find themselves as one of the busiest airports in the world. So I think we need to look at this comprehensively.
One of the things I'm looking on your website, tomwesley.com, and I think most people are concerned about this, maybe more so than maybe any other issue. I think we're concerned about jobs and job security and how we grow the economy here in Massachusetts. What's your feeling about that?
Well, look, I've had a very extensive business background. I've actually run factories. I've manufactured product in this country. I know it's hard. I know what it takes to make a payroll. I know what it takes to expand a business. And I've also been involved in moving factories. I have international, global experience. And what we need to do is to begin to reduce those barriers to keeping business here. It's not corporate greed that moves jobs offshore, for example. More likely, it's government greed that moves them offshore. You've got 3 things out there. There's labor rates, there's material costs, and there's the cost of doing business, which includes taxation. We always think about losing jobs out to Asia for low labor rate jobs, but nobody talks about the jobs that we lose to places like Ireland, which have a single-digit corporate tax rate. So you've got some very high-tech jobs. 450 U.S. manufacturing corporations are doing business actively in Ireland, many from this district, by the way. And we're doing it because it's cheaper to do business there, not because the labor rates are remarkably cheaper. They're 2/3 or 3/4 what they are here, but single-digit tax rates versus the second highest tax rate in the world.
Well, when you talk about business taxes here in Massachusetts, we had the governor on a couple of weeks ago, and he's talking about how he's was so good at lowering taxes for business in one aspect, but yet he's also raised business taxes 3 or 4 times in another. It's like you wonder sometimes whether politics is almost guiding a candidate's perception what's really going on, as opposed to what's actually going on with business. You're a businessman. Tell us how difficult it is to own and operate a business here in Massachusetts.
Well, I can take an example that was in the Wall Street Journal a week or so ago. A gentleman was saying, the real company with fictitious names, but he said in order to pay an employee $59,000, that person's going to actually bring home $44,000, but he's going to have to pay $79,000 in order for that person to bring home $44,000. So there's $35,000 there. That's all related to tax, all related to unemployment insurance, workers' comp, withholding, Social Security, et cetera, et cetera. So we think it's not. You think it's inexpensive to hire someone. You're paying them a wage. Well, that take-home wage, that living wage, has to be plussed up to get to a gross pay, and then it's plussed up again to get to the cost of actually having to pay that person, it's plussed up again. That's the cost of the individual company hiring that person to do business. And if the government is always changing the regulations It's very difficult for someone to feel confident to make those investments right now. So it's easier now, in this day and age, for companies to just try and be more productive than it is to go out and hire someone because they're not quite sure what's going to happen.
I'm trying to do the math based on that formula you just gave a moment ago and figure out how much exactly Rock 102 is paying to have us at minimum wage. I guess it's about $15 an hour. I don't know how they're alive.
Let me just say, you guys are worth it. You're
Yeah,
worth
every
$15
penny
an
is
hour.
short.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, I don't know why he or how he even is still surviving in his political career, but Charlie Rangel would seemingly be on his way out as the chairman of the House Ways and Means, and there's a lot of rumor about Richie Neal taking over that top spot, and all of a sudden, for what some people consider to be the first time in a very long time, there's a genuine candidate, genuine opponent to run against Richie Neal. Do you really want to be responsible for ruining Richie's dreams?
I don't look at it that way. I actually think he's going to wind up landing better financially because he'll probably wind up becoming a lobbyist on K Street. And think of all the money that he can make then. And all the money you'll save. And we'll keep it in your pockets.
Seriously, though, I mean, when you think about somebody, and you mentioned it before, the guy's been there for so long that, and you say that in a negative fashion because that's how you campaign against somebody who's been there for so long. Other people who support that idea say, well, he's been there for so long, he's able to get things done. It would almost seem to be an insurmountable challenge for a challenger. Do you obviously feel as though, maybe not obviously, do you feel as though, you have your work cut out for you simply because of his longevity and you have to work that much harder than the last guy, whoever he was?
Well, look, it's ironic, isn't it, that people want change and they hate the status quo, and yet they might say, well, look, we're going to get a lot more out of it because he has that longevity and the potential to have a very influential position on Ways and Means. But I've been at this for over a year. I gave my first speech back in June of 2009. So I've watched the intensity of the opposition increase month after month after month, and there were, of course, lots of important waypoints along the way, not the least of which, of course, was Scott Brown's victory back in January, and then the health care legislation debacle in terms of the non-debate on Capitol Hill, et cetera, et cetera. And here we are, probably up against amnesty conversations during the rest of this summer, more bailouts going on as recently as yesterday. People are very, very frustrated. So I think there's a more of an overwhelming sense that we need to change the incumbents that are in Washington. Look, I'm beholden to no party. I've not run for political office before. I'm just as disappointed with the Republicans as I am with the Democrats. It's time for a change. It's a time for leadership down there.
Very good.
Tom Wesley running for U.S. Congress. You can go to his website, tomwesley.com, or repealneal.com. Tom, best of luck, and I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you,
Pleasure.
Tom, for coming out here.
It's 7:23.